I'm Lisa Starr, and I'm awfully glad that you're here to join us for our October show for the Arts Café Mystic as we enter into our 30th year. In the spring, we'll actually officially be celebrating the 30th year since we began. Melanie Greenhouse is, I think somebody is reading a few of her one-act plays in a small art center someplace tonight. And Christy Williams is starring as Barrymore somewhere over the Old Lyme area. I mention their names because they're the folks that got the Arts Cafe going 30 years ago. I sure hope they'll be here in November. I miss their presence every time they're not here. But I stand on great shoulders. I'm honored to be here representing the Arts Cafe. I'll mention my board members later. A year ago, we shifted from the Mystic Museum of Art, Mystic Museum of Art, and it was a difficult change to make. We had been celebrating our series there since they opened, and our organization has transitioned, and so has theirs. And COVID put us all into sort of one of those stone polishers, where you never know if you're going to come out or not. So this is how we reworked it. Our friends from La Grua Center aren't here. They trust us so well. They show up and leave us to our devices. And we're so grateful to be in this space. Probably most of you have been here before. For me, not enough. And every time I come in here, I'm transformed. Even if I come in on a Thursday morning and nobody's really around and I just look at what they've done in this small pocket of light that has been in existence, I think, for about 20 years. But what a job they've done with it. So the artwork changes. We never know what we're going to see. It's always fun. The light and the space and the sound is terrific. And so I welcome you all here. We're going to get right to it and start with Marguerite. Is it Keel? I've never said your name. Kyle Flanders. Forgive me, but I know her as Margie. And I've known Margie for a long, long time. I don't know when it first started, but I do know our relationship really, really congealed and solidified when I was the Rhode Island Poet Laureate and trying to reach out everywhere to start circles of poetry in communities that I kind of considered marginalized or silenced. A bunch of people stepped up, and it was Margie that really took over the program that we started in medium security at the ACI. And for 9 years, Margie led a group that went in and out of medium security every other Saturday for 9 years, and helped the gentlemen there that we worked with publish their own poems, would type some of them up from little folded pieces of paper so they could see what it looked like to really see their words. And she's an extraordinary soul. She's got books over there that she can tell you about. I just want to hear your poems, Margie. It's been too long since I've seen you and heard you read a poem or two. So thanks for being here from all of us tonight.
This is my book, The Persuasive Beauty of Imperfection, and there's some for sale over there on the table. I'm going to read two from the book. One is called After One More School Shooting, and it's really hard for me to write about things that are horrific that happen in our world right away. This one took a while, but I wrote it way back when you could count on one hand or two hands the number of school shootings. So it's that old. After one more school shooting, I fell out of love with the world, and truth and beauty fell too. I picked up the shards of my soul, walked them out the door into the woods where the soil was too shallow to bury anything. So I lay them gently by the roots of a quivering sassafras, turned and ran away. Wind covered my brokenness with leaf and bark, blessed it into oblivion. And though I would never be the same, some magic reduced my heartbreak down to molecules too fine to be perceived, too small to matter, and reassembled them into a new wholeness, resembling hope. And then I fell in love again. What else could I do? Second one, it's about grief, long, dark. Last night I forgot to sleep, closed my notebook, traced a labyrinth on the blotter, spilled nothing, broke nothing, did not cry for my mother, though the knot of my navel grows raw and red as if untying. This morning I wear her rings as if I am an heiress. I knock a vase off the shelf as if I'm not. Her death still makes me unable to lie down, and even the return of light is a gift I'm too ashamed to receive. And feel free to not clap after every poem if you want. Poets don't know how to say that, but anyway, to lighten up, this is a project that I started many years ago. It's called When Pearl Was Young, and it's completely autobiographical, and I, for some reason, chose the name Pearl instead of calling it me, or maybe it was in order to be able to write in third person. So they're all true. So I'm going to read four of them. Think of it as a four-part poem. Number one, Braids. The junior choir lines up for the Easter anthem. Blue robes, white pilgrim collars. The mean boy pulls Pearl's ribbons. The silky braids fall free. Her eyes fire with shame at being so disliked, singled out. She doesn't know. He just wanted to see how they worked. Number two, the village. The rangy sumac forest behind Dee's house is their village. They make lean-tos against the fence, fill jelly jars with pith from the sumac, use it as their money. All is peaceful until the Pickering Street gang ravages their dwellings, scatters the branches of their homes. On a bitter summer day, Pearl races on her bike to the library, finds the others, and passes the news. She cries for the village, but also she feels a little pleasure. She is like Paul Revere. Number three, snow animals. On snow days, Pearl and her two friends make animals of snow in the backyard, big enough to sit on, pretending to race until their fannies are wet and cold. They make horses, but Pearl, only so-so about horses, creates a lump, a large, beautiful, and strong lump, so it can be anything she can imagine. And it is always one imaginary nose ahead of the horses. Number four, Patsy the Beagle. By Buzzards Bay, Patsy tears through brambles, briars, and poison ivy, baying in a new voice, coming home with bloodied ears, happy. At first, Pearl is afraid to touch the hot fur, shocked by the transformation into the wild. Then she cannot get enough, is hungry to have that same feral sound come from her throat. And this is called The Editor. I know that my editor-in-chief from Crosswinds Poetry was here last month, and it was a great gift that he gave me to invite me. It was fun and stressful and all those things. But this was written before, when I was still on the side where I was sending my work in an envelope yet, submitting the editor. Lydia is in bad humor, cuts her thumb opening my envelope, frets that her daughter will be refused by NYU. She doesn't like my font, hates poems about mothers. She sees now that her cat threw up on the oriental rug. Her temples ache. My pages annoy her. There's one line that gets her, though. She too saw a sky open as a lily once when she was pregnant and in love. So she pours a cup of coffee, looks out the window, takes up my poems again. If I knew enough to hold my voice, my breath, I would. But I am driving my mother to the doctor or playing violin in the blush of a late and petulant afternoon. Lydia has never seen me cry or carry logs to the wood stove. But she holds my life in her hands, weighing my words. When she throws away the envelope that held my poems, she does not know that I kissed it before sliding it into the mouth of the mailbox. And this is a prose poem. It's from a dream, and it was a free write from a dream, so it's mystical. I dream I am a performer on more than a sidewalk, less than an altar. I am extemporaneous, a one-woman troupe with no plan, out in the back of a theater in an alley, full of ash cans and discarded geraniums, with an audience of crows who study me carefully as I sing, move, billow, and recede. I throw myself down and roll to honor the earth that hides under the pavement. The crows are rolling their eyes. I stand back up. Everything is on invisible fire in slow motion as I recite Shakespeare from my seething brain, walking backwards in circles. I am wearing a pale pink nightie, so I must be a child, a breeze, the opposite of a bar fight. I enjoy wrestling with equanimity and winning, and the crows eventually lift in flight into the murky business of night with brutal disregard for the fact that I am still performing a giant cloud of energy, a dance, an aria, a tumultuous mingling of all my separations and returns to myself and what it is that I am and always will be. And let's see, I have 2 poems left. This is on Ode to Gratitude. Our house flooded in 2010 with rain and thunder pounded down like an angry fist all night. A handmade basket and many silk scarves and photos were drenched. Restoration awaited. But the next day was bright. Our woods had turned yellow and red, sassafras and maple, and I was grateful. The day my mother was dying, my mood was dark blue. Her last breaths were like a vandal foot that barely could make a sound. But still, I was grateful for her. Tonight, my studio is warm as church. I taste and smell of the salt water I swam in this afternoon. The wild dogs are singing from a far ridge, and my right hand is writing. I have never known starvation, and probably never will. So I am grateful. Okay, it's my last poem. It's a slam poem. I wrote it a long time ago. It's called The Sound of Women's Voices, and some of it seemed dated, but I still think it's important. Someone once told me, I think it was my father, that a woman's voice should sound like a slow stream moving past a meadow, but I don't think so. I think a woman should raise her voice like a roof when she needs to. Loud as wind thrashing through a bunch of drums hanging from 5 strong trees. Maybe you're thinking of 10 women you know who talk too much and too loud. But sometimes women have to speak up to be heard, or else their voices will thin out and squash down to little folded pieces of paper because they're out of practice or they hushed up too much when they were girls. As a woman, I think a woman should laugh as loud as she can when she feels like it, even in church, and even if it cracks the lip of some stained glass saint, and the belfry falls into a tumble of splintered timbers at the sound of her laugh, and everyone is embarrassed for her. I think that woman should keep laughing if she feels like it, loud. I think a woman's voice is rather like a talking stick, or like a scepter, or maybe like a sword, or at least a pea shooter, shooting out hard little peas until they hit the back of someone's head with her words, and they go, ow, and turn around. And she says, now you listen, because I have something to say. And I think a woman should have something to say, not just the prevailing fashion of thought and American small talk hoo-ha, but plain speak, heart speak, otherwise known as truth. Because a woman who has bled every month does know truth from crap. Believe you me, and she has something to say, even if it's still inside. Sometimes a woman can speak softly and still sound loud, but I think a woman should find and use every part of her voice till each word is like a song. She moves backwards and forwards, whether she's whispering loud or shouting outrage. Because a woman's voice is sometimes all she has. Because a woman's voice is what can never be taken away. Because a woman's voice is more like a whitewater river, changing and dancing and moving past a stand of ancient trees who all stop their work of weaving sunlight into food to listen, to really hear her words the way they all should. And now I better shut up, but only for now.
Good evening. I am the token folk singer of the evening. I think I'll start off with a song I wrote for someone who is both a poet and a songwriter, the great Leonard Cohen. I wrote this after he passed away in November of 2016. I was fortunate enough to see Leonard Cohen perform before he passed away in Boston, and the hall was packed with people of all ages. And in fact, sitting right in front of me was a grandfather and his grandson. And I could overhear their conversation. And the grandson had never heard of Leonard Cohen, and the grandfather was telling him he was in for a real treat. So this concert began, and with every great line that Leonard delivered, the youngster would just like smack his head in amazement. And I was sure before the end of the show that he did it so much that his head would be permanently slanted back, But the treat was mine because I got to see, sort of experience Leonard Cohen through the eyes and ears of that youngster. November's grieving, Brother Leonard, you're leaving. Will they bury you with a new felt hat? Your house is in order, you'll soon cross the border, impeccably dressed in black. There'll be caviar and an open bar when you pass through that door and enter the tower of song. A glass of Bordeaux, a Marlboro, you'll be coughing with Hank Williams till dawn. You were born in a suit, it's your class attribute. Old school honor and pride. You did not like your voice, but you had no choice. You were holy and broken inside. And we are so grateful that you were able to drop to your knees and sing, to hold it up to the light and testify, to be free as a songbird in spring. You're heading back home on the wings of a poem. Break open a hole in the sky. When old Montreal wraps you up in her shawl, you will arrive. The St. Lawrence River will sparkle like silver. The bells of Notre Dame will ring. Our Lady of the Harbor will pray in your hour, and a drunk in the choir will sing. November is grieving, Brother Leonard is leaving through a crack of light in the sky. So the famous French high wire walker, Philippe Petit, he made two famous walks in my estimation. The first one you're probably all aware of, 1974, when he walked between the Twin Towers. And that was the highest walk off the ground. It was over a mile high. But probably the most important walk he did was in 1987, when he walked across the Ben Hinnom Valley in Jerusalem. And the Ben Hinnom Valley is referred to as the Valley of Death, because it separates the Arabs from the Jews. And Philippe had planned at the midpoint of that walk to release a dove as a symbol of peace. And so there he is, halfway out on this wire over the Valley of Hell, and the tension on that wire was as great as the tension in the crowd, as you can imagine. Philippe reaches into his green silk purse, and he produces the dove, and he lets it go. And the dove flies up, and it lands on his head. So, of course, this was not part of the act. And this rattled Philippe, and of course the wire needs his full attention, as you can well imagine. And the audience picked up on this, that he was in distress, and then something beautiful and magical happened. Both the Arabs and the Jews put aside their differences, and they pulled together, and they began to clap in unison with each footstep that Philippe did. And in doing so, they all crossed the Valley of Hell together in peace. It's called Tightrope. Between the Twin Towers, Philippe walked the high wire in a universe of clouds. faith replaces doubt. The crowd looked up at the cold steel wire. When he stepped out, they became a choir. 1,000 voices rose up to his. Together they crossed the abyss. Humanity, a symphony, rise above religion and race. The give and take a tightrope makes, meet in the middle in peace. They strung a wire in Jerusalem. Tension high, end to end. Through the quarters that divide her people, he crossed between them over the valley of hell. They stood apart, the Arabs and the Jews. Philippe balanced above in view. They did not know he would release a dove. They did not know they'd cheer out of love. Humanity, a symphony, rise above religion and race. The give and take a tightrope makes, meet in the middle in peace. Humanity, a symphony, rise above religion and race. The give and take a tightrope makes, meet in the middle in peace. Can someone just give me that? Thank you. Yeah, I'm getting a little parched here. Afraid I'll throw a clam out there. You don't want to hear that.
You might give us some water?
Oh no, I'm fine. This is good. So whiskey's good. Yeah. This next song is a co-write. I wrote the music and the melody, and my good friend Mary Mueller, who is a poet, wrote the lyrics. Mary's right here. So I do have a little cheat sheet in case I don't know this one, but I know the others. So this song is inspired by observing life at various cafes, including a special one in Istanbul. Where's John? Yeah. And cafes are like living, breathing entities, and the mix of people gathering at any one cafe at any one time, so to create this own unique world, and that world has its own rhythm and time signature. So this is called Cafe Time. I remember the cafe in Istanbul, on a magic carpet we took in the view. Dusk was falling, we drank green apple chai. A lute played sadly, it felt like a sigh. We ate baklava and Turkish delight. It's jazz at noon at the cafe. A random meeting, the usual latte. A friend walks in, we talk of pressing news. A couple kisses, the other has the blues. A syncopated drummer, a cafe groove. If you take the time, life is made here. Just open the door and know there's nothing to fear. Tonight at the cafe, there's a balladeer. The lights sparkle and you nurse a beer. While the dogs look on and the children dance, he sings us stories, some are romance, others are truth we need to advance. If you take the time, you can stir things up. Connect to the pulse through the clink of a cup. If a stranger walks, or a book to read, or a poem to write, if a stranger walks in, you need to invite with a welcome smile, a sign of light. If you take the time to connect to life here, just open the door. Who knows who will appear? Who will appear? I remember the cafe in Istanbul. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Margie Flanders for bringing this show to my attention and suggesting I asked to be included. And of course, to Lisa Starr for graciously booking me. Thank you. And to all of you for your kind attention. I'm going to do one more song. This song I wrote in 2018 for a winter solstice poetry event. And Margie actually organized. And I got to thinking about all we had to endure in that year with all the Harvey Weinsteins of the world and the political climate in Washington. And then I got to thinking about winter solstice itself, how it marks that time of the year when the dark days become lighter. So this is a little invocation, this song, a little prayer, if you will, to not lose hope. It's called December, where December is the personification of our country. Thank you. December closed her eyes, blew out the candle, went to sleep to find some peace of mind. The year had been unkind, manhandled. She reached the beyond her grief for one good sign. As days grow shorter, hope burns longer. Darkness cannot fight against the light. Gather in love, fan the embers, help December's winter sun shine above. Frightened doves on the icy branches, there are hawks who have no heart peering down. But there is a holly bush past the cold park benches, where the old, the sick, the weak are safe and warm. As days grow longer, hope burns stronger. Darkness cannot fight against the light. Gather in love, fan the embers, help December's winter sun shine above. Help December's winter sun shine above. Thank you. Thank you.
As we all drive home on a beautiful, warm, mild October night, let's just be grateful for everything that we have, because, man, it's a dangerous place. So with that said, Steve, can you come up and lighten the whole thing up? I met Steve years ago. I had the great good fortune of being invited by him to be a reader at the Manchester Community College, where he ran the creative writing department. We'd cross paths a little bit at UConn. I was busy dropping out. He was maybe getting educated, I don't know. But I've known Steve's work really for about 25 years, and I'm so honored. We had Steve read for us, but it was during, I believe, the first year of COVID, and we shifted our schedule because we couldn't meet inside, so we were doing outside, and Steve came to read in November, which can be wonderful or not so much. So I remember you guys were both really concerned. Like, what if too many people show up and they're not wearing masks? And that really wasn't a problem. We were all kind of we had blankets wrapped around our mouths, so there were no need for masks. But it was a small audience, but I got to hear every one of those poems loud and clear. I know I've made a special request. I'll be throwing things at you if you don't read it. Steve, I'm so pleased that your third collection won the award that's worthy of your work. Your first two books won other awards. Your body of work spans 30 years. But this last book, with its recognition, hopefully you're going to be reading at places like this all over New England for the next 1,000 years. Welcome, Steve Straight.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you all for coming out, my fellow performers. Thank you very much. I was telling Mike that my wife and I perform fairly often. She's a musician and I do poetry, and the one rule I've really learned is never follow the musician. And here I am doing it. I'm going to read from all three of my books, plus a few new poems. Let's see, I've got some good stories to tell. I got a couple scary poems about the apocalypse. those won't be the end. I'll turn after that into something more hopeful. If I'm not careful, there might even be an uplifting poem in there. Can you hear me? Sound okay? A little closer, she says. And,
There you go, like right about. I know it looks scary.
Mike the Pro says.
Well, we have this on us so I don't break a tooth. I'm just kidding.
That's
If
good.
you get about 2 inches from
Got it.
there.
All right. Is that better or worse? Better, okay. I'm going to start with 3 poems about hitchhiking, believe it or not. I used to do a lot of hitchhiking, starting with when I actually started college up in Lewiston where the shootings occurred. I went to Bates for a while, and I used to hitchhike back and forth to Connecticut. That was my big introduction, and then, as the poem will all describe, there was a pretty big trip when I was 25. So, hitching. My mother thought my sister had driven me home from church. My sister thought my mother had. So in June 1963, age 8, about 6 miles from home, I walked to the main drag, turned to face the traffic, and stuck out my thumb. A car pulled over moments later, and I thought, this is easy. They were strangers, of course, the first of many in my hitchhiking career, including 9,000 miles around the country when I was 25. Rides with the lonely, like the kid who dropped out of college, heading home to the parents he hadn't told, who got 1,000 miles of counseling. The Samaritans, mostly ex-hitchers themselves, like the farmhand who insisted on taking me 4 exits past his because he knew, he said, the perfect ramp to score a dope ride. And some crazies, of course, the Sears Roebuck heir high on speed who'd driven nonstop from California to Indiana and was afraid to sleep, who had a 357 under his seat, he said, to scare off the next guy who tried anything. Or the guy in the old pickup in Oregon with the 30-30 across his seat. To break the ice, I asked if he liked to hunt, and he just said no. They were hippies and rednecks, alone or in pairs, mostly poor people in beaters who offered you water or food or a place to stay when you knew they had little. They're gone now, the drivers and the hitchers, and today the only one you'll see disconsolate by the curb is some guy with an empty gas can whose cell phone has died. Praise and thank you to all who stopped for me with or without a hand-lettered destination sign like Cal or NY, with short hair or long, even in the rain, knowing I would wet their seats. But especially those grandparents who stopped for a little boy and who let me convince them not to take me right to the door, but to drop me at the end of my street so I could waltz in and announce, I'm home, to the startled family members who could have sworn I already was. The next one describes an adventure that was part of that 9,000-mile ride across the country, and it's called Panning. I don't think there's anything I need to explain here. Panning, June 1st, 1980. Happy to get any ride across the Mojave Desert. My friend and I tossed our packs into the back of the pickup truck and rode the waves of highway from Flagstaff to Vegas, fried by the wind and sun in the high, thin air. The truck bed was filled with a couple's meager belongings collected in garbage bags we used for pillows, and a carton of old milk rotting in the sun. On stops for gas and once for a flat tire, we learned their story. Gerald, with bad teeth and bare feet and long, dirty fingernails, wearing a silver bull pendant, had lost his job in Texas, but was full of his plan to move to Oregon, to pan for gold and shoot porcupines for money. $1 a head, and you can kill 200 in a night, he said. They had already hocked their TV and chairs for gas money, and now were down to a laundry sack of coins they'd saved to play the penny and nickel slots in Nevada. He said all of it brightly, but with a twist in his eye that made us wonder once when they stopped at a gas station but didn't get out, just stopped, if the plan included my friend and me jumping out together to use the bathroom and never seeing our packs again, or if the knife in the sheath strapped to his thigh was more than a cowboy prop. Late in the ride, late in the story, as we passed by towns named Chloride and Grasshopper Junction, mostly scrub as far as the eye could see, as our transient family chugged toward the sights of the Hoover Dam, the woman rapped on the thin window separating us and pointed down into the trash below us, smiling. We rooted around for anything of value or meaning until my friend held up a box of Pampers. She smiled and nodded, and as he passed one around to her window at 60 miles an hour, it dawned on us that all along on the front seat had been a tiny baby, gurgling its trust in their great adventure. I often wonder what happened to those people. You know, it's one of those, people come into your life and go out of your life, but you know there's a huge story there. This last one actually is on the back of your programs, if you want to read along in your hymnals. It's a little poem. It's from the same trip. The day after my buddy Mark flew home from Oakland to take an accounting job, I kept hitchhiking up to Seattle and across the country by myself. Many more stories I could tell in that stretch. It's funny though, because when we first started hitchhiking, we had the worst possible attitude for hitchhikers, which is expectation. Like, you're expecting the car to pick you up. We got frustrated and pissed off that cars were not stopped for us, you know. I think at the Grand Canyon we waited 4 hours to go 7 miles, and then we got another ride of 3 miles. So this is about not having that attitude anymore. Lesson. Standing by the side of the road in Jenner, California, hitchhiking. At least that is the idea. So few cars pass that one may not stop today. It's sunny. Goats dispersed across the hillside behind me chew their way up the green hill gradually, attentive. The sea breeze carries phrases of seagull chatter from below a cliff. In my pack are clothes, water, oranges, 3 loaves of sourdough, peanuts, cheese. Hung below the pack, a tent. I peel an orange, tucking the continents of rind into a loose pocket. Drops of juice fall onto the sand and on my boots. A bee lands on the lip of a yellow blossom and walks inside it. It emerges, dusted with pollen, drunk, surprised by the generosity of light. All right, time for a crazy poem. I went to Manchester High School in Manchester, Connecticut, and let's see, gym class was divided into all boys and all girls, so we never saw the girls in our gym class. I think they're all co-ed now. And our gym teacher, Mr. Cobb, had to decide how to grade us. And when we had swimming during December, he had to decide, how do I grade swimmers? You know, how subjective is it? He came up with this idea that he would grade us based on how far we could swim underwater. The pool was 25 yards. That was a C. 25 yards underwater is pretty far. So a lap and a half, that was a B. 50 yards underwater without coming up, 1 breath, that was an A. Tough. I wanted the A, of course. Oh, one tiny little detail more. We swam naked. You know, if they had said, on the previous Friday, get some swim trunks, down at Marlowe's, we would have done it, but they never did that. I don't know if it was a Roman thing, we're back to Roman times, but it was just a bunch of scared teenage boys, waiting to swim. Sometimes I think I should read this with one breath, but it's too long. All right. The deepest breath. I'm 15, I'm naked, I'm at the edge of the pool, and everything about me is small. Ross Pastel has already done it, but he swims breaststroke on the swim team, so 50 yards underwater means holding his breath for only 30 seconds. Another boy has made it, but 23 of us have not, and remember how small I am. The previous week, after a lap and a half failure, I had walked to the short wall, sat down, and then found myself a sack of numb limbs on the floor, being told to take it easy. I'm 15, I'm naked, I'm at the edge of the pool, and everything about me is small, including my lungs. To make it, I'll have to hyperventilate, but Mr. Cobb says we can't, so I've snuck the breaths in, storing secret molecules as I sat on the wall with the other boys. By the time my turn comes, I've got so much oxygen, I'm smiling, and everybody must wonder about me. I'm 15, I'm naked, and I'm off. The water's cold jolts me, and I have to fight to stay calm because excitement eats oxygen. But here, underwater, I'm not as naked and glide a good 10 yards before my first stroke, then open my eyes and begin. My stroke is focused and smooth, a solid kick, more like a side stroke kick, then sweep my hands out, back, and glide. No strain, no sound. I am a little fish, all full of slippery purpose. At the turn at 25 yards, I feel good and glide back at least 5 or 6. I've done this each class all December, 2 times a week to begin class, so I know the terrain of this consciousness like my own house. It is my own very long room. A glimpse of thought about air, and I change the subject quick, knowing it's way too early. I think of my father diving off the dock when I was 8. I thought he'd never come up, or couldn't imagine where. Months later, I'd see his head way off in the middle of the lake, it seemed. I savor the remnant, the last vestige of that film at the lake, and squeak out a few more yards. I'm 15, I'm naked, damn it, and I hate Mr. Cobb, and it's one-on-one with my lungs now, with my brain, which are the same thing now. I try to scare myself with passing out again, this time underwater with everyone rushing in to save my scrawny little wart of a body, but the pain in my brain won't let me think of anything else. Go up, it says, leering at me, or you'll die. You'll have to go now, or you won't even make it to the surface. But I'm 15, I'm naked, and for the first time, I can see the wall, and I know in a flash that all along I've been swimming to a naked place inside me, that I'm swimming to God, that contained in this breath is all I need to know. That's when you know you got it, when there's somebody in the crowd with that big clap. I like that big clap. I think it was over here. I guess this next poem is another new one. This argues that you can write a poem about anything. This is called Urinal. There's a reference to Marcel Duchamp. I mean, I'm with a bunch of educated, art-loving people, so you all know who Marcel Duchamp is. But for the one person who says, who was he again? He was a famous French modernist. He entered a show in New York City in a society that he was a board member of, and the only rule was you had to, I guess, sign your piece. You could enter anything you wanted to. So he entered a urinal, upside down, and called it the Fountain, or Fountain. And he signed it R. Mutt. There's lots of discussion of why he signed it R. Mutt, but anyway, urinal. To illustrate the concept of personal space, I offered my class the example of the men's room urinal row. No man, I said, seeing a single man standing at one, would take either spot right next to him. The women in the class laughed, the men nodded. The next week, a student said he would miss an important class to appear in court because of your class. To test your theory, he said, when I was in a bar in Westerly last Friday night, I saw one guy alone in the middle of the row and took the urinal to his right. He pulled a knife on me and still had it to my throat when the police came, still cursing me and exclaiming his hetero-ness. The rich history of urinals, from ancient troughs to a patent in the 1860s, from French pissoirs on city streets to what Marcel Duchamp called the fountain, upside down and signed our mutt into art history, includes my father discovering in Haiti urinals filled with ice. He tried to melt as much as he could, he told me, as if dissolving some of Haiti's many ills. Once in a pub in Galway, as I stood before a 10-foot marble trough, 2 men came in and took their places on either side of me. I did not pull a knife on either one of them, partly because I had no knife, but mostly because one was the U.S. Poet Laureate, Robert Hass, and the other the Nobel Laureate, Czesław Miłosz. No words were exchanged, but we seemed to be writing a poem by committee, one we would call The Stream. My wife says, you should tell people how that happened, really. Well, we were at a poetry festival in Ireland at the University of Galway, so it wasn't that crazy that these laureates showed up on either side of me. It was pretty crazy, though, when I realized who they were. Robert Hass, by the way, one of the nicest humans you'll ever meet. Really sweet person. Shifting gears to family a little bit, here's a poem about 2 photographs. The first one I describe is my father's father, and the second one is my mother's father. So it's inheritance after 2 photographs. 1/4 of my genome sits on a tractor with a kind of fez on his head cocked with half a grin. He is 91, about to start the day's chores. I know he had trouble seeing the camera and couldn't have heard the cheese clearly, but there's no escaping the twinkle. No escaping the strong, liver-spotted hands that signify a life of milking cows and clearing fields of stones and making do. Once he came to our house, and my father warned him about petting the cat. Still, he couldn't resist, and at the first stroke, the cat striped his hand. I remember the look on his face, neither shocked nor annoyed, the same half grin as on the tractor. Life is interesting. It has been worth it to live this long. Even my own blood intrigues me. Another 1/4 of my genome sits on a wooden bench between his house and the lake in Pennsylvania. He is 66, wearing only tropical print swim trunks, reading a book called Dreams. With his round belly and bald head and big toothy smile, he is the Buddha on vacation. 25 years earlier, in seminary, perhaps blowing too hard on the coals of inquiry, stressed by money woes, with 3 daughters at home and headmaster of a failing school, he snapped into a manic state and came to believe he was Jesus. It took the fire hose of early shock therapy to reduce him to the mellow soul I knew. In the photograph, he is beaming at me. The look on his face says, yes, there is all that, or was, but now there is this. Now there is you. Applause dies down. How y'all doing? It's kind of a funny place here. I mean, it's a beautiful place to read, but it has a mix of informality and formality. It's people you don't know, sitting at tables, that's casual. See what you think of this one. My father liked to enter contests, especially those 25 words or less contests where you'd win prizes, radio, refrigerator, tickets to something. And this is a persona poem in his voice in which I try to capture both his process and at least some part of his unbelievable energy We went to see him in Florida once, my wife and I, and she didn't know him well, and I left to do something for about 20 minutes, and she came out to greet me, and she said, "I'm exhausted." I think it was 80. So this is, my father enters another contest, 1956. 25 words or less, but they mean less. Let me swing open our old Frigidaire here and plop my chair down right here in the opening. Let that cool air wash over me like a bath. Like a bath. A cool bath for your food, for your milk. A cold bath for your beer. It's good and hot outside, so this feels like some kind of miracle. That's not bad. Feels like a miracle. I can remember hauling ice on the farm when I was a kid, packing it in hay in the barn. So that cold bottle of milk I'm looking at right now reminds me how easy it is these days. A brave new world, like instant winter. The miracle of instant winter. The instant winter miracle. Winter in the middle of summer. If this main compartment's winter, the freezer box must be the Arctic. The Arctic for your ice. Ice straight from the pole. A little too obscure. They don't want obscure. When I won that radio, they didn't want Marconi. They wanted a box seat at a private symphony. Too bad I can't use freeze your ass at the Hotel Buster. Remember that joke? Oh, hell, take a streetcar. Wait a second. Frigid air. Frigid air. Right smack in front of me all this time. That's good, that's good. Let's open the door and close it a few times. Let the cool waves come out. What about the light? Even in the dead of night, you can fumble your way down the hall, find the handle, and you're all set. The loyal light, the light that waits for you, the guiding light. See, that's good. That's why it's stuck. Let's try imagining that new GE right here. Probably got umpteen gizmos, lazy Susan jobbies on the shelf, dedicated egg bins. GE, the wizards of widgets. A spot for every chicken. GE makes you say gee whiz. The power to control the weather. GE stays cool in desert heat. A little Canada right in your kitchen. Sometimes even when you got it, you don't know it. That's life. Maybe I should just go out and think about it while I cut the grass. Toro, a bowl for your lawn. Makes tall grass say ole. No, wait, hang on, hang on. At GE, we keep your life cool. Something in a poetry reading, you can't do a lot of long poems in a row. You have to do short, long, short, long, short, long, something like that. Both my wife and I are cancer survivors. And when you're a cancer survivor, you get that added bonus of those miserable checkups where you get to get terrified all over again. What are they going to find? Did it go away? Is it back? So this is biopsy. Before the oncologist calls with the results, and we hear whether my wife will have to endure another 2 years of surgery, radiation, and chemo sickness, her hair falling out in clumps, white cell count dropping precipitously, or worse, or not, we pretend to vacation by the lake. And I noticed the lone maple turning orange and red prematurely, the dark clot of cloud moving over us, and down in the middle of the lake, someone's unmoored raft drifting with the current. After the call and the tears and the hugs and more tears, only then do I see the pair of loons circling each other across the lake, the newly opened water lilies by the shore, sunlight replacing shade as the cloud moves north. And when my wife flings the ice cubes from her drink over her shoulder into the lake, the tiny rings spread out in perfect concentricity until eventually the surface returns to glass. Mayor, they don't applaud for the cancer poems. This is a fun poem. This goes back to New York City when the Algonquin Hotel was thriving, and they had a beautiful performance spot right in the hotel called the Oak Room, now long gone. But this is Talisman for my wife, Marion. We're sitting at our table in the Oak Room of the Algonquin Hotel around the turn of the last century. White tablecloths, polished silver, dark paneled walls, for an intimate jazz cabaret. Just two kids from Manchester, we like to say, even now in our 60s. Slightly nervous about being here, a fabled place we can hardly afford, and I'm wearing a jacket and tie, for God's sake. I fumble with my napkin, drop a spoon on the floor. Champagne clinks in other people's glasses. After dessert, we soak in How High the Moon, Night in Tunisia, It Had to Be You. They can't take that away from me. Just green candlelight for the tables, a spot for the pianist, the occasional ice cubes chiming in glasses when the waiter passes. Later, in our tiny room upstairs, when my wife turns from bolting the door, I hand her the spoon, the one I had palmed and hid in my dinner jacket, Algonquin engraved on the handle in its ancient font. What possessed me? Still trying to impress my bride, I suppose, and also perhaps to warn her that I was not completely tame, at least not yet. This morning, I see the spoon again immersed in its baking soda bath in a tinfoil tray on our counter. Tonight, by the bowl of soup, it will gleam. The oak room now long gone, what remains is the look on her face. Surprise, then a hint of awe, followed by unabashed glee. And the spoon, of course. The spoon lives happily ever after. All right, now I'm into the apocalypse. No one left the room, that's good, good sign. This is from my first book. So this is a poem about climate change written 25 years ago when we already knew better and still weren't doing anything about it. And I guess this kind of predicts what humans are going to do as the threats of climate change get closer and closer and worse and worse. They're not going to do anything. Last summer, in the last summer of America, everyone ate cheeseburgers, smiling as the grease ran down their chins and had to be damned with a wrist. Everyone ate ice cream and talked about how hot it was, how hot it would be tomorrow, and how about those Dodgers, those Yankees, those Mets. In the last summer of America, everyone mowed their lawns to stubble, kept watering at night or on alternate weekdays, had cookouts with Joe from the office, had tag sales where glass bottles and Stephen King books traded cellars and attics, and no one could get enough lemonade. In the last summer of America, everyone made one last trip to Disney World to ride inside Space Mountain over and over, to see Mike Fink's keelboat ride where the water splashed over the boat right into your face, with a line to the Pepsi Pavilion snaked in and out of the chutes and fences strung along the tarmac, and senior citizens keeled over like dogs left in the car. In that last summer of America, fireworks burst like spiders and rained their red and blue legs onto the crowd below, happy, so happy to look up at the sky from their soft blankets on the warm, dark earth. And this is from the new book, also climate change. It's a little dense in places, but I think I can make it work. The conceit is this, that we're all on a giant cruise ship together. Unfortunately, it's named the Apocalypse. And we're upper class, so we've got prestige level cabins. Cruising, and this is dedicated to Tony Hoagland, a poet that I heard at the museum in the early days or middle days of this series. Phenomenal poet, one of my heroes. Cruising. We're standing on the top deck of the Apocalypse, prestige level. Its wastewater fouling the sea in our wake. As off in the distance, the moonlit iceberg of awareness pokes through the surface of our comprehension, though 90% of it lurks below. 10% is about all we can take, yet still not enough to change our ways. Not enough to link the polar bear stranded on its tiny floe to the steak medium rare on our bone china plate. The zooplankton ingesting the molecules of plastic bag we used yesterday to cart home the romaine lettuce grown in the sunny concentration camp of the Salinas Valley. Lobsters scuttling north to cooler water as longhorn ticks bushwhack their way into new territory, the heroes of some other story. while we buy clothing treated with permethrin or spray our kids with DEET to think ourselves safe from the viruses. Down south, the mangroves know all this. Their roots knitted together in a fiber optic system, collecting and sharing data from their leaves, doing their best to excrete excess salt or store it in their tissues, stabilizing shorelines and taming tsunamis until it's all too much, even for experts. Can you hear the musicians, the ones asked to soothe all the passengers? Years from now, they will find one of the rosewood violins, surprisingly pristine, and exhibit it in the Museum of Civilization. More than one echo of the Titanic there, of course. They did find rosewood violins in perfect condition that were on the Titanic. It's rosewood. It's hard. Let's see. Yeah. My wife and I were headed to New York City on a bus once, and we saw a big sign on a building, and it was supposed to say storage. Big, big letters, probably, 10 feet high. But the O had dropped out. The O had dropped out. The O, that symbol of wholeness and, everything is together. The O had dropped out. So what is left after the O falls out of storage? Saint Rage. Here we go with Saint Rage. Saint Rage proclaim the block letters on the brick building we pass as the bus arrives in New York City. And tasting the rancid steam rising up through the grates of a civilization past its expiration date, feeling a tension in the air as the remaining spoils of the natural world are divided, seeing the politicians and the powerful scatter whenever the lights are turned on, I can understand why. It's a miracle more of us don't shoot each other or T-bone other drivers who block our paths. It's no wonder we feel something missing no matter what we pour into our lives. We may need to fill in the O's of closure, of wholeness ourselves. Kids drawing them in beach sand with sticks, or special teams parachuting O's from the sky, or even forming the O's with our own bodies, sitting with Buddha arms, hands cupped gently in our laps, slowly counting to 10. The next poem came out of a plane ride in a very small plane from Toronto to Hartford. And I was given an unforgettable seat 1A. Seat 1A on the Beechcraft 1900D from Toronto to Hartford is a serious seat, I realize, when the tall, thin co-pilot suddenly leans down from the low cabin ceiling into my face just before takeoff, and over the fever of sound from the warming twin turboprops asks if I am prepared in the event of an emergency to save all 18 passengers, 9 on each side, by pushing this red button and releasing this rounded lever up. Or was it down? He monkeys his way into his seat up front and begins to flip indecipherable switches almost absent-mindedly, the roar shut out by his huge headphones. But I am so sobered by my charge that I see I am also what stands between the exposed, now deaf pilots and some crazy lurching down the aisle. My wife in 1B has a bad elbow and may not be much help. But then I think, aren't we all in seat 1A now? Having received our instructions, acknowledged the stakes, sized up our fellow passengers, and vowed in any event to save all we can. 3 more poems. This is called Murmuration. Probably many of you know what a murmuration is, but a murmuration is those huge swirling clouds of birds. That's a murmuration. And the beginning of this describes a murmuration that I saw a video of. You can see it yourself by just Googling murmuration and River Shannon. Murmuration, River Shannon, it's phenomenal. Phenomenal. There's a little science in here, but nothing major. Poets like science, that's a little known secret. Really. A lot of people think, oh, poets, they don't like science. I love science. Give me something to research. Murmuration. Two women in an old canoe at late winter dusk on the River Shannon. One filming, one paddling, as gradually a matrix of dark spots roils on the horizon. Birds, starlings by the thousands, forming and reforming clusters of swarming shapes, funnels and ribbons and hourglasses folding over each other and then swirling high in the air. Still cohesive and without turbulence as the women laugh in awe. It is their simultaneity that dazzles. How a giant game of telephone transports the message to turn or dive with electric speed, and as the physicists say, without the signal degrading, in scale-free correlation. Each shift a critical transition when they move as an intelligent cloud. What roils them in the gloaming as they prepare to roost, it turns out, is usually a peregrine falcon, the fastest animal on earth, coming in low at the edge and then shooting upward, its blue-gray back and black head blurred as the flock reacts as one. These days, we too sense something coming in fast and low, coming for us as we turn and turn in our widening gyre of discord and tumult and strife. And now the choice is ours. There is safety in numbers, I suppose. It might take her, but not me. But will we hear instead what is emerging, or can? The greater song that says we are but cells of a giant heart ready to pump new blood. This is a poem called Telling the Bees. It comes with a little head note, and the head note says, traditionally, if there is a death in the family or some other sad event, bees in hives are informed by their keepers, in part to keep something worse from happening. This apparently goes back centuries, that bees would be informed of bad things that happen. And that was interesting enough. I worked on the poem, wrote the poem, and then the queen died. And word got out that her beekeepers had gone to tell her bees that she had died, which is pretty cool. Telling the bees. In my vented full-body suit with helmet and veil, gaiters covering my ankles, long goatskin gloves, I approached the hive. Some say this should be done at midnight, but I have come in early morning, a light dew on the grass and mist rising off the long river in the valley below. I draped the hive with black crepe, then knocked gently once to tell them I have come. I listened to their electric buzz. How to tell them how much trouble we are in, how close we are to ruin, how very much we need their help. In a little rhyme, perhaps, as is tradition. The earth still spins, little bees, but we dread what lies ahead. Save yourselves and save us, please, before our global hive is dead. Bees know the world is round, what zero is, how to dance the angle of the sun even when it's on the other side of the world, how to make food that lasts for thousands of years. I, on the other hand, don't know anything. Exhausted by the smoke of doubt and fear, I long instead to be stung again by wonder, by joy. Murmuration, of course, is about the two women being stung by wonder, by joy. I think if I have a religion, my religion is nature. And I practice it every day by trying to be out in nature mindfully. That's pretty much it. And I'll close with Vincent. I had to, right, Lisa? Vincent. Vincent, the name Vincent gets explained in the first line. The thing about chipmunks is they all look alike. You know, male, female, young, old. You can't tell chipmunks apart until one has a distinguishing feature. In this case, you'll hear. Vincent. The one-eared chipmunk I had fed so many times last year from my hand, so close I could study the tumid wound where his left ear had been. The sucking fly stuck to his striped back, the tiny toenails manicured by rocks, did not return this year. And I imagine all the calamities that chipmunk flesh is heir to, the silent dive of the red-shouldered hawk, the neighbor's wily calico, the fox whose baby squeal electrifies the night, and even plain old age, which is never far off for a chipmunk. And I blamed myself for taming him to the point he trusted this indentation in the big stone atop the wall, that despite his palpitating heart, he might have let down his fidgety guard because of our daily routine. And so now, when he does appear, 3 weeks late, ear hole now healed, and clambers over the rocks and into my hand, all 4 feet, even pausing to eat one of the black seeds as I hold him aloft. What choice do I have but to stop, breathe deeply in the palm of the present, to shuck what isn't and savor what is? Thank you.